Western dragons are often seen as greedy, fire-breathing monsters with massive bat-like wings, hoarding treasure until their inevitable fate of being slain by a knight. But in China, the dragon is entirely different. Far from evil, it is the ultimate symbol of auspiciousness and divinity. More importantly, it is not born a god. It starts from the absolute bottom, enduring a brutal 1,000-year transformation just to climb out of the mud. This evolutionary journey is documented in the Tales of Marvels, an ancient Chinese text from the 5th century. A hui turns into a jiao after 500 years. A jiao becomes a dragon after 1,000 years. A dragon grows into a horned dragon after 500 years. And finally, a horned dragon transforms into a Ying Dragon after another 1,000 years. The first stage of this journey belongs to the hui. Thousands of years ago, if you scanned the mystical wetlands of the East, you wouldn't find a single dragon. Instead, hidden deep in the murky swamps, you would only find a small, dull-colored venomous snake, barely a foot long. At this stage, it has no horns, no claws, and its scales are rough and coarse. It is so fragile that any predator could easily crush it. Its only weapon is patience. It must hide in absolute darkness, enduring the mud for 500 years. After surviving those 500 years, it sheds its skin and enters the second stage, the jiao. Its body surges in size, and sharp claws rip through its underbelly. Yet it still lacks horns, making it a pseudo-dragon. Forbidden from basking in the sunlight, the jiao must plunge into the coldest, deepest riverbeds, enduring 1,000 years of crushing water pressure and crushing loneliness. This millennium is a grueling process of reshaping its skeleton in the dark. Once the time is up, it faces the most violent turning point of its life, the Jiao Torrent, or Zou Jiao. On that day, the sky ruptures with torrential rain, and rivers burst their banks. The Jiao must ride the raging flash floods out of its deep pool, rushing down the rivers toward the ocean. It is a terrifying race against death. Ahead are low bridges rigged with ancient dragon-slaying blades. Above are crashing bolts of heavenly lightning. To reach the sea, it must forge ahead as its flesh is torn and its scales are ripped apart by the elements. In folklore, this chaotic sprint is what determines whether it becomes a benevolent dragon or a demonic beast. The raging floods can easily wash away villages, and malicious jiao will recklessly smash through anything in their path. But the jiao destined for divinity will desperately restrain its destructive power. It will deliberately swerve around human homes, sparing innocent lives, even if that means taking more direct hits from lightning and enduring a much harder path. It is precisely this restraint in the face of absolute power that earns it the right to pass through the Dragon Gate. The moment it plows into the open ocean, it undergoes a total metamorphosis into the third stage, the dragon. Now it is finally a true dragon. It gains the divine power to command the winds and rains, soaring between the ocean waves and the mountain mists. But it still has no horns. To become a higher divine being, it must endure another 500 years of solitude, watching human empires rise and fall like dust. After those 500 years, 2 horns break through its brow. It enters the fourth stage, the horned dragon. The horned dragon is no longer merely a spirit of rivers and seas. Its horns mark its authority over storms, clouds, and the hidden order of nature. But even this is not the final form. The price for the last descent is another long, agonizing 1,000 years. If it survives that millennium, it achieves its ultimate absolute form, the Ying Dragon. At this final stage, its back painfully ruptures to unfurl a pair of massive, majestic wings. The Ying Dragon is the only winged deity in the entire dragon pantheon. It no longer belongs just to the rivers and seas. It belongs to the highest heavens. It becomes a supreme god, a celestial general that slays demons, and a world shaper that uses its tail to carve out China's great rivers, guiding floodwaters safely into the sea. It takes 3,000 years to transform from a lowly hui in the mud into a Ying Dragon looking down from the clouds. While the story of the Western dragon is about conquest, the story of the Eastern dragon is about restraint and fulfillment. Why do 2 creatures both called dragons head towards such opposite extremes in image and destiny? One became a demon that must be slain, while the other became a deity to be worshipped. The answer is simple. They represent 2 entirely different logics of survival. The Western dragon, at its core, is the projection of human fear toward an unknown nature. In ancient Europe, the survival environment was brutal. Facing sudden volcanic eruptions and raging forest fires, the early ancestors had no scientific way to explain this destructive force. So, they objectified this fire into a giant, fire-breathing beast. And notice how Western dragons always love to huddle over treasure. They occupy massive wealth but create zero value. This reflects early Western society's wariness of monopoly and greed. Therefore, Western heroes must go and slay the dragon. They do this not to wipe out an animal, but to kill the monster hoarding the resources and bring the wealth back to the world. It is a logic of conquering the unknown. The Eastern dragon, however, is built on the exact opposite logic. It is the human reverence for the order of nature. The core of Eastern history is rooted in agrarian civilization, and farming relies entirely on one thing: water. Too much water brings floods, too little brings drought. Unable to control the weather, ancient people imagined this power over wind and rain as a creature that could plunge into the deep abyss and soar into the high clouds. Thus, the Eastern dragon is made of symbols cherished most by an agrarian civilization: the endurance of a horse, the gentleness of a deer, and the abundance of a fish. It does not breathe fire, it brings rain. It does not steal treasure, it brings a bountiful harvest. Faced with nature, Westerners chose to conquer, so they slay the dragon. Easterners chose to coexist, so they revere the dragon. This divergence is most obvious when it comes to their wings. A Western dragon must have massive, bat-like wings. In Western logic, flying without wings defies gravity and is physically impossible. Yet, the Eastern dragon has no wings for the first 2,000 years of its evolution, before it reaches its final form as the Ying Dragon. It doesn't need wings. It only needs to ride the wind and glide with the clouds to traverse heaven and earth. In Eastern philosophy, the highest form of power does not stubbornly fight gravity. It aligns with the natural law and borrows the power of the universe. You see, the dragons of the West and East look different and meet different fates. One is constantly pierced through the heart by heroes in epics, while the other receives the cheers of thousands of households during festivals. They were never real animals. They are two giant mirrors, one reflecting the Western spirit of conquest and adventure in the face of the unknown, and the other recording the Eastern spirit of restraint, harmony, and romance in the face of nature.